Light your fire by the river, sleep on the ground. Ramble, 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 it's the only way back home. See the crows come and tell your story to the smoke. What can't hold itself up on the land, I say, let it go. Cause we all live downstream.
Hello and welcome to the Bikeraft Guide, the ultimate how-to guide, history of, and wild adventure stories about bike rafting. My name is Lizzie Scully, and I'm your host and the co-author of the book along with Steve Doom Fastbinder. This community multimedia storytelling project includes film, audio, and written stories from expert bikeraft adventurers from around the world, including Roman Dial, Brett Davis, Eric Parsons, Annie Lloyd Evans, Hugh Oliver, Kim McNett, Bjorn Olsen, Dean Parker, and so many more. In this podcast, we'll share the interviews and stories told by these contributors during the making of the book. Stay tuned. We're launching an Indiegogo campaign January 12th, 2021, where you can pre-order your book to be published spring 2021. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Today's show, episode number 1, tells the story of an all-star cast of athletes, Mike Kuriak, Roman Dial, Doom, Dylan Kench, and Eric Parsons. They flew to Yakutat, Alaska in 2011 to traverse the southern half of the Gulf of Alaska coastline with fat bikes and pack rafts. This is the story of their crossing of the La Perouse Glacier and also of the tiny custom boat Roman used on that trip. Of that boat, alpaca raft designer Sherry Tingey told us in a recent interview, Roman was determined to take that little 10-inch tubed boat, but it was just confirmation that something that small just wouldn't work on a trip like that. He didn't have enough firepower under him. So this is what happened, as told by Doom.
But it was a Scout plus 6 inches. So it was a long Scout, and it had grab loops on the front to where you could strap a bike down to it. Scouts normally don't have any grab loops because there's no room to put anything up there in the front, like on the front, on the bow. And he had this really, really kind of dicey, thin deck that was, taped on, like welded onto the boat, that you just entered through the center. It had like a V-shaped opening, and you got in it and you Velcroed it closed up to your chest. And he had this seemingly cool, ultralight boat. But turns out that the volume of the boat was not big enough to carry a bike, a full-size fat bike with gear. The skirt made it kind of difficult to get in and out. Like entering and exiting was kind of dicey. But the first half of the trip, or even just the first 3 or 4 days, the crossings you're doing are very short. And they're serious in that you could have a problem, but it's flat water, pretty much not any current, and you get in the water, you put your bike on, you cross, and then you're on the other side within 20 minutes max. And there's no waves, it's mellow, a little bit of current here and there. But halfway through the trip, things change, and you have to, you have to launch into open ocean breakers into the open ocean. And then also the harder part is landing on the other side. So we had to go around the La Perouse Glacier. Okay. It's the only glacier in North America that terminates in the Pacific Ocean. Oh. All the other glaciers that come out to the sea, they come out into bays, like Glacier Bay, right? For instance, Glacier Bay has all these glaciers feeding into it. Big glaciers, but they feed into the bays. They don't feed into the actual open ocean. And so the La Perouse Glacier comes right out into the Pacific Ocean. And its snout just comes right up in the ocean and falls in. And every once in a while, depending on the year, if their glacier has receded a little bit, there's a beach there and you can walk across it. We tried to do that and failed. We couldn't get across it. The ice blocked our way. And we had to retreat with our bikes and go back to the beach. And so our option was to either open ocean launch into the breakers, which is seemingly very sketchy. Roman did not want to do this because he also had the least capable boat of all of us, this small boat. And this is where I'll get into the fact that I carried one of his wheels for him because he couldn't take all the parts of his bike because he was too low air volume. He said he'd buy me a pizza if I would take his wheel for him, which I took him up on. And he did take care of it, bought me a pizza in Gustavus. But the only other option was to go up over the La Perouse Glacier, over the ice and all that with our bikes. And it looked nasty. And so Roman wanted to go that way because he'd traveled a lot of glaciers and thought we could do it. And Eric Parsons wanted to go out to sea and go around the glacier. So it was 2 miles paddling with the bikes going across, the open ocean crossing. Maybe a 2-hour situation, and pretty easy once you get out into the water, right? Once you get through the breakers and paddle in front of this glacier and land on the other side, it's a 2-hour experience. If you're going to push your bikes up and over this glacier with numerous, who knows what kind of crevasses, a giant shit show, cold, icy, slippery, messy, it could have taken us a whole day. And so Eric was like, we should launch. And there's these breakers, and we're watching the sets come in. We're like, man, it doesn't look good. Like, it looks hard. And Roman goes, well, you go first, Eric, and if you make it, I'll go. And this is a very Roman thing to say. And he said it just like that. If you make it, I'll follow. And so it was on Eric. And we all pack up our boats, get ready to launch. And Roman's like, well, I don't think I can take my wheel with my rear wheel because my boat is like, it's not capable of carrying that much stuff. Because he had a Scout, very low volume boat. And so I said, I'll take your wheel. And so I pack it all up on my... And I had one of those like black experimental dry suits from Alpaca from way back when. No one else had a dry suit. So I was in the water, standing in the water in the breakers, helping everyone launch because I had a suit on and I could kind of like stay dry-ish. And so I launched everyone out and everyone made it. Eric went first. He totally made it. Dylan followed. Rome was like, all right, here we go. No problem. Mike, no problem. And so then I'm on the beach by myself trying to launch, which is kind of hard because the breakers are coming in. They're throwing your stuff all over the place. And I'm like, all right, here's my break. And I went and I made it. But I was nervous. And I paddle out to those guys and we go around the glacier. And it was like maybe an hour and a half of paddling. Not a big deal. Once you're out in the ocean, it's calm. It was a nice day. But then you get to the other side and you have to land on this other beach. But you don't get to... It's hard to time it because you're not standing on the beach watching the sets come in and be like, okay, here's the break in the sets. Now we go. You're in the sets and you can't tell when the good time to land is going to be because you're right there in this big moving water kind of situation. And so Dylan and Eric, I believe, or maybe it was Dylan and Roman, had paddled farther down the beach and had already landed. And it was Mike, Eric, and myself were coming in. And Mike goes, so...
Where's Roman?
Roman and Dylan had already landed.
Oh, okay.
And they were doing their thing down the beach a little ways. And so the other three of us were like, all right, well... And Mike goes, in a very freaked out way, he's like, well, how do we time this? And I think Eric said, well, I think just got to go for it. And we're pretty close to shore. And we're like, is it time to go for it? Do we go for the beach? And just as we're having this conversation and it's ending and we're like, maybe we should stay, maybe we should go. Like the Clash song. Should I stay or should I go? I hear this kind of roaring behind me and there's kind of a set of rogue bigger waves. And I hear them and I'm like, not right now! And I turn around and I paddle back out into the ocean. And these breakers come in and they just wash Mike into shore. And as I turn back and paddle out to the ocean to avoid these big waves that are starting to form, I look back and I'm like, I wonder if those guys are going to go. And I see Eric turn back and paddle towards me. I don't see him turn around because he's on the other side of this giant breaker. But I see him catch air and fly over this wave with his bike and descend down the backside of it towards me, being like, that was so fucked. I don't think Mike made it. And I'm like, 1, 2, 3, no Mike. I'm like, he's on the other side of that thing and just getting trundled into shore on this big breaker. And so Eric and I are like, well, I think they're over. Maybe we should paddle to shore. And we can't even see Mike because there's all these waves. And, it's a chaotic, dynamic situation. And then we were like, okay, let's go to shore. And so Eric and I turn around and we paddle to shore and we just think we're on good timing. We were. And we literally just rode a little wave with the paddles above our heads right onto shore. Boat sat down on the beach and I jumped on my boat and pulled it onto the beach. And Mike is this shit show. His bike got ripped off his boat. He lost his hat, his sunglasses, and destroyed his camera. And his shit is just like a yard sale. And Eric and I just rolled in on this perfect little wave and just sat on shore. Like, when an airplane lands and it's perfect.
Yeah.
That was us. And when an airplane comes down and its landing gear didn't come out and it just crashes, that's what happened to Mike.
Oh,
yeah.
brutal.
And he got worked.
And that's it for our show today. Stay tuned. We'll be sharing more stories and interviews coming soon.
We all live downstream. We all live down.